right, welcome everyone to our expert Q&A webinar with Dr. Angelique Corthals. My name is Sarah Cahill. I will be your coordinator and webinar host for this evening. Thank you for being here. Please drop your questions for Dr. Corthals in the chat during the meeting, and I will relay them to her during the session. But first, I would like to hand it off to Julie Lamb, our founder, and she's going to give us a few words of introduction for the night.
Thank you, Sarah. As founder of Masticate America, I'm excited to see all of you here at the Q&A session with our expert advisor, Dr. Angelique Corthals. This year, the high-risk community is devastated by the removal of the COVID emergency. In April this year, Dr. Corthals and I and other members of our team, Debbie Sokola, Dr. Linda Green, Phil Nolan, and Christina Oriana, went to DC to meet with government officials because we know that the removal of the emergency will lead to big losses. Following the ending of the emergency, healthcare facilities dropped masking. The super hard to build infrastructure that collects real-time data got dismantled. Some states cut funding in their wastewater surveillance system. A new wave started in July. We saw a rise in the youngest age group, infants and children, in hospitalizations and ER visits, right behind seniors under 65. FDA just approved the new COVID vaccine with a monovalent XBB 1.5 composition to target currently circulating Omicron variants. But we don't have monoclonal antibodies for immunocompromised people, myself included. State government has been kicking millions of people off Medicaid health coverage. This nationwide disenrollment is an ongoing atrocity. But that's not it. The safety net hospitals that largely serve uninsured and low-income patients will also suffer a big cut in funding unless Congress acts soon to stop the cut. COVID is back in full force. Otherwise, President Biden won't be giving away free rapid home tests starting next Monday, September 25th. Tonight, Dr. Corthals will explain why vaccination alone won't stop the spread and why we need other tools. Thank you, Dr. Corthals, for fighting for health equity. Now I will pass the mic back to Sarah Cahill, who is a coordinator of Masticate America. Thank you, Sarah, for hosting the webinar.
Thank you, Julie. Distinguished guests, it is an honor to introduce Dr. Angelique Corthals, biomedical researcher, forensic anthropologist, and associate professor at John Jay College, whose multifaceted career has made a profound impact on both the realms of science and humanitarian aid. Dr. Corthals' groundbreaking biomedical research delves into the intricate interplay between neurodegeneration, metabolism, and environmental factors in disease and aging. In the field of biological and forensic anthropology, she has devoted her expertise to unraveling the histopathology of trauma and disease. Her remarkable journey has also led her to serve as a consultant for the esteemed organization Doctors Without Borders, where her extensive background in developing biological repositories for medical and natural history applications has proven invaluable. Dr. Corthals not only provides crucial insights into diagnostic technology, but also plays a pivotal role in shaping guidelines for HIV, TB, and other neglected or emerging diseases. Notably, her exceptional contributions were recognized in 2020 when she received 2 grants from the National Science Foundation to investigate infection evasion by coronaviruses in bats, exemplifying her dedication to advancing our understanding of critical global health challenges. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Angelique Corthals, a trailblazing scientist and humanitarian whose work embodies the spirit of innovation and compassion. So thank you, Dr. Corthals. We are so happy to have you here. We have a lot of questions from our internet audience to bring you up to speed on, and to our current audience in the webinar, please drop any questions you have for Dr. Corthals in the chat box, and I will be sure to get to those during the session. So thank you again, Dr. Corthals. Our first question tonight is related to vaccines. Can annual vaccines alone stop this wave with all of the circulating variants?
Right. Before we go on, I thought we were going to talk about the petition.
Yes, we can do that too.
Yes, just to make sure.
Sure. So Debbie, if you want, the floor is yours. I put the link to the petition in the chat, but Debbie's going to speak a few minutes just on the petition that we are writing to the CDC.
Hi, I'm very happy to help Ask Together America launch our new petition, and also to be helping as a health policy advisor. Just briefly, I've been working on access to healthcare issues for many years, and one piece of this petition is to urge free access to vaccines, tests, and treatment again. But mainly it urges CDC to embrace multi-layered prevention to protect high-risk people and everyone. We cannot accept constant infection. The petition emphasizes making it safer to seek health care. That was the top issue in comments from this community about what people want CDC to do to protect us. Please sign and share it with friends, by email, or on social media. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. All right. We will dive right into the Q&A session. Dr. Corthals, just to refresh, the question that we had first is, can annual vaccines alone stop this wave with all the circulating variants?
Well, unfortunately, not really. The vaccines are emergency tools, so they were developed as such. And unfortunately, while they're extremely efficient at making sure that we don't develop the severe form of COVID, they're not good at stopping transmission, which means that because of that, we cannot actually achieve herd immunity, which is what usually would happen with a vaccine that we call sterilizing vaccine. Not because it sterilizes you, it just sterilizes the pathogen, right? So if we think of smallpox, for example, not only does the vaccine prevent the development of disease, but it also prevents transmission and thereby killing the virus and eradicating the disease. And same for polio as well. We're not there yet with COVID. And the mRNA vaccine has a waning immunity that goes down from 2 months after vaccination. There are much more resistant viruses, but still they do not provide a stop of transmission. So no, a vaccine alone cannot stop. We need the NPIs, the non-pharmaceutical interventions.
Thank you for that. Julie from Facebook wanted to know, why did our leaders chip away at proven mitigations for a novel virus? Why go from all to nothing by ending the COVID emergency phase? We've not determined COVID seasonality. Why didn't our government use a 3 or 4 phase step down to determine what to do to help all people live with the virus? We didn't live with smallpox. We can't live with malaria. I'm extremely disappointed and at odds with this new normal approach. This is a cop-out. COVID will continue to mutate, spread, and cause irreparable harm to every aspect of our lives.
That's a long question, and that could be an entire debate. Well, unfortunately, from the very beginning, this virus came at the perfect time for itself, because it came at a time where populations around the world were actually at their most divided, and at political end of spectrum. And unfortunately, from the very moment we learned about it, it became politicized. So the disease became politicized immediately. And once you mix politics and health, bad things starts happening. You can't make decisions based on science. You're actually making decisions based on feelings, opinions, and political expediency. And this is actually what we're seeing right now, particularly in this election cycle, which is approaching real fast. We're going to see less and less mention of COVID, unless COVID really just all of a sudden just takes off with a variant that just breaks through everything that we have right now, all of the emergency tools that we have.
Thank you for that. Codfish from Instagram would like to know, can you share some information about nasal sprays, such as if they can be thought of as a layer of protection proactively, or should you use them after an exposure, or should you use them only if you're sick? The one I'm most curious about is betadine cold defense. Betadine cold defense, I assume you're familiar with, but if you're not, it's iota carrageenan. I think I'm saying that right. But
yes, you are. Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely. So betadine is what we use to sterilize the field when we practice surgery. So just you sterilize the area in which you're going to make the first incision, so to prevent infection. Yes, so nasal sprays. There is a lot of hype about nasal spray, and it's very difficult to parse out what is good data versus non-good data. My method is to look if there is a published result from a clinical trial, and if there isn't, I will not adopt that particular spray. So currently, I personally am using Enovid, which is a nitric oxide based nasal spray. And the reason why I'm using it is because there's been several clinical trials. Mind you, one of them was operated by Sanofi, which is the company that makes Enovid. So you always have to be careful about who's doing the clinical trial. But there is an NIH publication that is completely independent from the makers of Enovid, which is very convincing. So to answer the question about when should you use it and are they efficient? Yes, they seem to be very efficient. It's obvious that the patients that use nasal spray before and after exposure had a lower rate of progression of their disease or not at all, and also had much lower viral load when they were RT-PCR tested. So that basically was all the information that I needed to start using Enovid. You are recommended to use Enovid before. So for example, if you are going to be required to take off your mask, say you're going to the airport, for example, you can use Enovid to spray your nose before you removing knowing that you're going to have to remove your mask in an area which has a lot of people in it, and it's also been proven to reduce the time of infection if after exposure. So there was a clinical trial that was done in India, of all places, not with Enovid, but with a nitric oxide based nasal spray. So basically the same kind of formulation that showed as well very good results in terms of lowering the viral load, and meaning that the person would either not develop COVID or would actually have a very short course of COVID. And these were also, I want to point out that the clinical trial that was done in India was also performed on people who were not vaccinated. Which I don't think you would be able to do that kind of clinical trial here, but it was very interesting to see that data coming out of there, because of course here we have anywhere around the world we have people who cannot be vaccinated, right? And so knowing that there is a tool out there that could prevent them from getting COVID, or at least also prevent them from progressing from exposure to severe disease, is really important. Bit of warning though. Nitric oxide is not for everybody, and before you get a nasal spray, whether it's the betadine one or it's nitric oxide, you must talk to your personal physician about it, because people with high blood pressure, for example, should not use a nitric oxide spray. It could be detrimental, and it could lead to quite a few side effects that you really don't want to have. So anytime you use something like that, always talk to your personal physician who has your entire medical history.
Thank you so much. Jessica would like to know, does the vaccine prevent severe outcomes in immunocompromised people?
If they can take the vaccine, yes, it can prevent dangerous outcome for the immunocompromised. It has basically the highest percentage of preventing severe outcomes of COVID. But of course, with immunodeficiency and immunocompromised patients, there's always a variety of caveats depending on the immunodeficiency, right? And so this is the reason why we can't really rely on the vaccine as a tool to prevent mortality from COVID, because not everybody, first of all, can get the vaccine, but not everybody also is covered equally in terms of immunity by the vaccine. And I'm not just talking about immunocompromised patient or immunodeficient patient, but also patients with autoimmune diseases who also cannot have the vaccine because it would trigger a reaction that would be worse than COVID itself.
Kind of a sibling question to this. Mm-hmm. Can vaccines and treatment together keep people from getting very sick and developing long COVID?
I'm sorry, can
the vaccines and treatment together keep people from getting very sick and developing long COVID?
Well, it reduces the likelihood, but it doesn't prevent it 100%, right? Again, everybody is different and everybody is different. Everybody is actually using those tools in a different way. Not everybody has access to both the vaccine and the treatment. I mean, I have a personal anecdote where one of my colleagues at work, who happens to be African American, has had COVID 3 times, and not one time did she have access to Paxlovid. And if you ask a lot of African American patients, you'll find the same story over and over again, right? So if we could think of 100% compliance in terms of getting both the vaccine and the treatment, I would still say you're still not sure at 100% that you can get both, that you can that you can be covered, or you can you're totally going to be escaping long COVID. Those tools only reduce the chance of developing COVID. Your best bet for not developing long COVID is not getting infected. And this is why it's so important to not just vax and relax, but to actually have vaccination and then masking when you are indoors or outdoors in crowded area, have better ventilations. I mean, I don't understand how clean air has become so controversial nowadays. We've just come out of a summer where we are suffocated by smokes from the Canadian wildfires. How is clean air a controversy? We could clean the air inside building to the point where viruses would have very little chance of transmitting from one person to the other, and yet we're not doing it.
Thank you. Jessica would like to ask if TheraWorks provides any protection for COVID. I had to Google TheraWorks and I found a product called TheraWorks Protect, which is it looks like it's used in the hospital for ICU bathing, pre-surgical bathing, post-operative care. It's supposed to be looks like a topical lotion. And they're claiming that it could protect you from COVID because the World Health Organization says if you touch your face after touching a contaminated surface, that's how COVID is transmitted. And because it's an antibacterial product on your skin, they're saying that would be a protection.
Well, so fomites, there are, they're a bit of a a weird thing with COVID. Fomites are bad for any infectious disease. The chances are that you're going to put your hand in your eye is more likely than not. It's really funny, but we actually wipe our eye really often, and we don't realize we're doing it. And that's the primary entry point for viruses and bacteria. Most people don't realize that either. I mean, we think of licking our fingers full of germs, but actually licking our fingers is less problematic than putting our fingers in our eye, rubbing our eyes. The reason being that at least when you lick your fingers, it goes into the stomach, and you are less likely to develop a bug from having licked a surface. Don't do it at home, but still. So I don't particularly know about the product that you're mentioning, but it goes back to good hygiene, and good hygiene is part of the non-pharmaceutical interventions. Wash your hands, yes, for sure. You're going to touch your face, absolutely, about 100 times during the day, and chances are about 50 times you're going to be in contact with the mucous part of your eyes, and that's how you're going to catch or have a possibility of catching a fomite, whether it's from COVID or flu or any other. The flu is actually more transmissible through fomites than COVID. As far as I've looked at the literature, it is a much more common route of transmission than COVID. Still, always have hand sanitizers, and make sure you wash your hands frequently.
Thank you for that. Noreen would like to know, if it's been 4 months since receiving the bivalent vaccine, would it be okay to go ahead and receive the current vaccine that was just released?
So, yes, it's okay to receive the vaccine. However, I would actually wait 6 months. The guideline is not clear right now. Well, it depends also on the bivalent vaccine that was received. So if it was Novavax, for example, I would say absolutely not. Just wait 6 months before you get the XBB mRNA that's currently available. But if it is an mRNA vaccine, then 4 months is acceptable. However, I have seen the guidelines have been very unclear. I've seen 3 months and 6 months. So I believe that the 3 months and 6 months are between either the bivalent booster or the first doses of the original vaccine, because people are still taking their original vaccine doses. So if it's the bivalent booster, I would say that 4 months is fine. If it's the actual original vaccine where you've just received your second dose of that, I would say wait 6 months. And if it is after the Novavax booster, I would wait 6 months as well, because Novavax has a longer immunity than the mRNA vaccines.
Noreen clarified to me it was the Pfizer bivalent.
Okay, then definitely, yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Do we have the tools we need to stop the wave?
No, because, well, we have tools, but we don't have all the tools, like we've been told. First of all, we don't have compliance from the general public. We don't have the main tool, which would be a vaccine that prevents transmission, so a sterilizing vaccine, which is, unfortunately. But we do have mitigation tools. So the vaccine is mitigating serious development or development into severe COVID. And then we have tools to prevent as much as we can being infected in the first place. The masks are really important. And I can't emphasize enough that in a crowded, poorly ventilated indoor setting, like for example, the public transport or any big public public buildings like malls and shopping areas, etc., because of the lack of compliance or the lack of understanding of public health and the fact that, you know, it's not just about yourself, but about protecting others, just wearing a cloth mask or a surgical mask is not going to be protecting you from catching COVID. You really need to step it up to a mask that's that has more filtration power, like the N95, and even KN95 are very poorly fitted, so they tend to be very leaky. So we do have some tools. The problem is, and this is why Julie and the rest of us went to Washington. The problem is people don't know how to use it 3 years after the beginning of the pandemic. So it's just, I have seen people walking around with N95 that didn't actually fit properly along their nose or under their chin, so that basically they're just flapping around in the wind. And then, of course, it compounds the problem of, well, I was wearing a mask and I still got COVID, therefore masks are not useful, right? So there are tools out there that we can use to protect ourselves. There's the Corthals-Rosenthal box to clean the air in a small area that you can make yourself for, I don't know, $20, I think. Well, $40 if you buy the actual the fan, and you can retrofit your own HVAC at home. All of those tools require a certain knowledge and also a desire to be knowledgeable about how to stop transmission and how to stop prevention. And this is our biggest problem. We are finding ourselves very much the way we were at the beginning of the campaigns to stop smoking, or the point at which the cigarette industry could no longer hide the truth about the harmful effect of smoking, and the beginning of the AIDS revolution, where patients advocated for themselves because they were dying left, right, and center, and nobody cared because it was thought of as a disease of homosexuality. This is the same thing. We are finding ourselves in the same kind of situation where the public health message is not there. There is no massive campaign. In fact, it's quite the contrary. The public health message has collapsed altogether, and it's basically now you do whatever you want. We're washing off our hand. It's now no longer public, it's individual health. And they're trying to brush COVID under the carpet so that we don't see it anymore. Unfortunately, this means that a lot of tools that could prevent a wave the way we're seeing it right now are not being used, even if they're not all 100% foolproof. And that actually also shows the importance of having layered mitigation. So none of those tools are 100%. The vaccine is not 100%. the treatment is not 100%, so it can't guarantee 100% that you're not going to get long COVID, for example, right? The masks are not 100% either. The ventilation is not 100%. But when you add all of these together as tools, you're getting close to that 100% because you're adding obstacles for the virus to get in, right? And this is why it's so important. Sorry, that was long as an answer.
That's okay. Cora
It's
would
your
like
fault.
to know.
You're letting me speak. You're letting me speak. That's your fault.
Gave you a platform.
Curse.
Cora would like to know, how soon after infection can you be vaccinated? Does the time you wait have any impact on your chances of getting long COVID?
That's a tough one. So there is a study that showed that vaccination does, to a certain extent, has a small protective effect against long COVID, but I haven't seen any convincing studies that show that that getting vaccination after having had COVID, after having been infected, is somewhat protective of long COVID, because you have to wait a substantial amount of time after being infected. They usually ask you to wait 2 months after infection to get the vaccine. And I haven't seen anything convincing. I've seen studies that mentioned it, but the cohorts of patients were very, very small, and the statistics were really not convincing. So I can't speak to that effect with authority on that.
Thank you. Julie would like to know, do we have the diagnostic tools that we need?
No, I wish. No. The diagnostic tools that we have are not sufficient. They're not catching up to the fact that the virus is changing and evolving into ever different version of itself. We're literally in a soup of variants, but one of the variants that's BA286, which is been named Pirola for some reason. I call it Pi because it's no longer Omicron. If you look at an evolutionary tree of the COVID of SARS-CoV-2, it is very, very far from Omicron, and so the distance between the two really would warrant calling it Pi. It's no longer an Omicron. Now it's taking off slowly, which is good news. But the bad news is our at-home tests are really not catching up to the fact that it's a very different virus, and they tend to give a lot of false negatives. They will still react once you're in the middle of the infection, which is important, right, to a certain extent, to know that it is in fact COVID. And if you don't have easy access to the fewer and fewer PCR tests that are out there, it's good to know that this is COVID. But the problem is that it's mostly not gonna catch asymptomatic infection, and that's a big problem. There's fewer and fewer no-cost PCR tests. The city of New York does have a website that shows the places that you can go to. They're few and far between now. But Lucira has completely stopped selling their COVID tests. You can now only find them through a secondary market in Canada. So it's a big mess. Seems that the world has decided that COVID was over. And the reason why, so this is actually something that I work on for Doctors Without Borders, is that every time we go to a potential developer of a diagnostic test, they tell us, well, there's no longer any market for it. So we can't develop it because there's going to be, quote unquote, no profit in that they're not even going to recoup the manufacturing costs. And so it's a lost proposition from the get-go, which means that we still have inefficient tools or stopgap tools that I would call that cannot catch up to the evolution of the virus.
Thank you for that. I also did not know that about Lucira, so I did a quick Google search, and it looks like they got bought by Pfizer, but that the Pfizer versions of the tests are not available yet. So
they're not actually. So they want to sell it as a test and treat product. So they will sell you the test with Paxlovid, and that's going to be expensive.
great.
Yeah, can't wait.
All right, Jessica wanted to know if Novavax is as effective as the other vaccines.
So I've read a lot of the background on Novavax, and actually Novavax is more effective than the mRNA vaccines. I mean, bless the mRNA vaccines, because thanks to the technology, we were able to get these emergency tools in our hands pretty much, less than a year after the beginning of the pandemic. So I love them for that reason. But Novavax, which is a protein-based vaccine, actually has a wider coverage in terms of the variants that it's able to neutralize. And therefore, the immunity that you have from the Novavax vaccine is longer than that of the mRNA. But again, not everybody can receive the Novavax vaccine. If you have an autoimmune disease, or if you have immunodeficiency or immunosuppressive, or are on immunosuppressive drugs, you really have to talk to your physician about getting the Novavax vaccine because it could have a serious side effect in your case. And currently, the FDA is still looking for is still reviewing Novavax for its XBB booster. So we don't have it yet. But it's there for the bivalent and the monovalent vaccines.
Thank you. Cora would like to know, when we talk about immunosuppressive drugs, does this include like prostate medicine, like deuterosteroid and other steroids?
Yes, steroids are a problem. They are immunosuppressive. So yes, definitely. If you take those you actually have to talk to your physician.
Thank you. Question from the internet: how does COVID spread?
So it's an airborne disease, not through droplets. It essentially is less. So it's less susceptible to be destroyed in the air as a viral particle than other viruses, which makes it so much more evolutionary adaptive than the other viruses, right? That's why it's more successful at what it does. Yay for you, SARS-CoV-2, well played. But for us, it's really bad. And it's had to, from the work that we've done in bats, we can see that it's had the time to figure things out, right? And this is the reason why it's so agile at doing what it does. It literally lingers in the air, and you can catch it from the lingering particles in the air, but it's more often transmitted when you are in close contact with a person who's breathing, even just breathing. That person doesn't have to sneeze in your face or cough in your face. Just talking, every time you talk, you're actually releasing a little bit of spit, whether you're aware of it or not. So you actually do expel a lot, both through the air and some liquid from your mouth. But it doesn't require that close contact. And that's the dangerous part, is that if you have a saturation of viral particle in a small room, for example, that's badly ventilated, you can catch it without having to talk to a person face to face, right? So that's what it means to be airborne, as opposed to the old doctrine of droplets, which requires that, you literally send a droplet of your spit into another person's mouth, which horrifyingly happens more often than you think, but that is not required by the virus. It's literally in the air. And then it enters your nasal cavity. Your nasal cavity contains specific cells, which are your mucus cells. We call them the goblet cells. That produces the mucus when you get a cold and you start having a runny nose. Those are your cells reacting to it. Has a proclivity for those cells. It enters those cells, and then through those cells goes underneath the protective layer of your nose, enters through your bloodstream, and then starts creating havoc. So what we're trying to do here, and what the vaccine tries to do, is to prevent having reservoirs of the viruses in your mucus cells, so that you can evacuate it and maintain a low viral load. And the reason why you have bad taste and bad smell poor taste and poor smell when you have COVID is because it continues up the nasal cavity to this part of your nose, which no longer has those mucus cells, but it has glands and also access to the olfactory bulb. So this is the point at which the olfactory bulb has branches coming from the brain into your nose. And this is the point where the virus hitchhikes your central nervous system and stops the smell and taste sensory system.
Not a big fan of that, honestly.
No, it's not. No, I'm not a big fan of that either. No, and I'm not even going into the fact that people who have been infected can have a latent reservoir of SARS-CoV-2 for a month after. But yeah, that's another. It's another caveat that the virus has developed, and it's a problem.
Jessica would like to know, when is the best time to get the COVID vaccine to get through the winter surge?
Now, if you can. I mean, yesterday would be better, but now is good too. And don't forget your flu shot as well. And if you can, RSV as well, because it's on the rise.
And to clarify on that one, RSV, is that available for immunocompromised folks, or is it only available for over 60 or infants? Because I've seen conflicting info on that.
Again, it's on a case by case. So if you are immunocompromised or you have an autoimmune disease, you must talk to your physician about protection from that. That's the case for all vaccines, but particularly RSV.
All right, got some questions coming in hot here. Cora wants to know if we can talk about the viral reservoir situation. She's confused whether this means you can be infectious again after recovering. Like, is this like HIV?
Yes, that's absolutely what it means. So I was talking about the mucus cells in the nose. The same type of cells are found in the GI tract. And as I said, there's SARS-CoV-2 seems to have a great affinity for those cells. And what it will do is hide in those cells and remain latent, and then either the immune system is going to start evacuating them little by little, or it's going to wait for a potential low in the immune response to manifest itself or to try to reproduce itself. And it can create a reinfection literally month after the original infection. It can also sort of rebound literally, but it also can create shedding, and that of course can help in can create more transmission. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking on behalf of the virus. I mean, you have to admire the evolution of this thing. That's all it has to do, by the way, but still.
Thank you. Dylan would like to know, will the new vaccine's protective powers have waned significantly by the time the holidays come around, and we might see an even higher spike then?
It's hard to predict. It's also hard to predict what the compliance to receiving the new booster is going to be. Right now, it's off to a pretty bad start, which means that fewer people vaccinated will mean more, like a higher rate of hospitalization. I'm really hoping, so when I say higher rate, we're already pretty high, and any indices that you're seeing right now that are being reported are way lower than what they are. Because if you look, for example, at the hospitalization map just for New York State, in the New York Times, what you'll see is there's a lot of areas that are in gray, and that means that they no longer are receiving data for those areas. So whatever hospitalization indices you're getting right now are way undercounted. So we're pretty out there, and it's no surprise that that the government has decided to send 4 more tests to people. They're panicking. They're panicking. That's how they're showing panic, right? They're like, okay, we're gonna do this completely, absolutely not enough step to send 4 tests that will go through in 4 days. But this is a really good indication that things are not going the way they should be. Now, is it gonna be a spike as big as Omicron? I don't know, because right now the variant that really worries me, which is the Pirola, the one that I call Pi, is taking off very slowly, which is very encouraging to a certain extent. But the other variants are creating a situation where it's making it easier for that variant to take on into the population, because it's lowering the immunity of everyone by infecting pretty much everyone. I'm sure everybody here has heard of somebody who had COVID in the last couple of weeks, right? And so it's I don't know, honestly, if there's not an uptick in the taking of the XBB update, they're no longer calling it booster. That's another way to see that people are panicking in the government. Then we're gonna have a big spike, but is it gonna be reported? And that's the other thing, is that we are going in blind, right? We're going blind in terms of reports to hospitals, from hospitals to the CDC. Even death certificates nowadays are really not showing COVID, even if the person died of sequelae from COVID, for example, microclots, for example, or if they didn't die in the COVID ICU, they died of side effect of their COVID infection, it's no longer recorded as COVID. So we also have an undercount in that. There's several things at play, and I think that we're in a very bad situation right now.
Everything that I've seen also suggests that. And like you said, I think the fact that things that are undercounted look bad is not a great sign. Wastewater is about the only thing I trust right now, just because it seems like there's not really a way to fudge that. It's like, that's the, hopefully.
Yes, literally and metaphorically, yes. But yeah, I had to go there. But anyway, yeah, wastewater, we have to be careful as well, because you know, it's not a solid indicator of the level of transmission, for example, that's happening, right? A really good indicator of the level of transmission is people actually testing positive, but we no longer have that data, right? And the wastewater is not a great level of transmission because, of course, I was talking about those reservoirs. So you may have a lot of people who have reservoirs of SARS-CoV-2. They're not infected, and they might not be infectious themselves, but they're pooping it out, and it goes into the wastewater, and so that makes the variation greater. But you know, it's this. You know, again, wastewater monitoring is sort of a stopgap. It's an emergency tool. It's something that you use because you don't have anything else, and we could have so much more. It's been 3 years. We basically, we could have entire genomic surveillance of the entire population around the world, because you know how cheap DNA testing is nowadays. It's like, you know, I send my samples for $3 a pop and I get the whole result back. It's just, there's no political will. It looks bad. So if it has a bad connotation, we're just gonna push it to the side. I was discussing with the Prime Minister of Belgium yesterday about, you know, the poor COVID response, and I kind of yelled at him, which I do on a regular basis. It's a small country. You can yell at your Prime Minister in Belgium.
It'd be nice to be able to do that here too sometimes.
Yes.
We are getting close to the end of our session, so I just want to be mindful of the time, but I'm going to hand it off to Julie to kind of give us a little bit of a wrap up here.
Thank you, Dr. Corthals, Sarah Cahill, Debbie Sokola, for being our voice. Please support our petition to demand CDC take bold actions. CDC Director Mandy Cohen said we have more tools than ever to protect against serious COVID disease and death, but we must make sure everyone has equitable access to those tools. She's right about equitable access that we need, and also we do have tools, but what we need isn't just vaccines and treatment. Masks, air purifiers, PCR tests, paid sick leave, education about long COVID are all effective tools. We need the CDC to set guidelines and recommend these tools. Dr. Cohen talked about equitable access. Then the CDC should require masks in healthcare and transportation. The rapid tests are not sensitive for many early cases, so why doesn't our government provide free PCR testing? Children under 12 can't get Paxlovid, but they can also get long COVID. Why are we not making sure that schools have air purifiers? The CDC should set guidelines about indoor air quality, which they did, but they did nothing to raise awareness or recommend regulation. We need to expand the wastewater surveillance system. Yes, even though it's an emergency tool, we really need to have data so people will be warned. The NIH has launched a test to treat program for people to get free tests, free telehealth, and even a prescription for Paxlovid if you are eligible, but they didn't promote it. The press didn't even write about that. And yes, thank you, President Biden. He announced that he will be giving us 4 free rapid tests per household on Monday. While he and his staff test every day, he expects that a family with children can survive this wave with 4 rapid tests, knowing that FDA recommends testing again after testing negative, and you need to test twice to leave isolation. Sorry for being a Debbie Downer here. Mask Together America has always been uplifting. We are an uplifting campaign created to support public health. But today, we can't hold back our disappointment about how American people are being treated. That's why we work with our community to create a petition. Thank you to all of you for signing the petition, and please share with everyone.
Thank you, Julie. Just a reminder to everyone that the link to the petition is in the chat. I linked to it a couple times. Please sign that when you get a chance. If you are not already members of our Facebook group, we have a Facebook group called Mask With Us. I will put the link in the chat here. Please join us there to keep on top of what we're doing as far as events, and just in general, we like to post news there so that everyone can stay informed and stay educated. Please share those with any friends that you think need to be informed or educated as well, because that is what we are here for. We are here to be optimistic and to also be realistic and to stay on top of what is going on. So thank you all for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night, and we will see you at the next one.